Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker and I are preparing for the NHL draft, the weirdest NHL draft ever. Some players have already started playing into their next season. It's crazy. The draft is October 6th, 2020, and the New York Rangers pick first overall despite, making it to basically the playoffs. We all know the controversy around that whole deal, and they'll, of course, take Alex Lafreniere if they do indeed end up making that pick. I don't know if there's any chance that they trade it. I know there's some stuff out there about some pretty intense moves that they could do that would be very interesting. I want to hear your thoughts on that, Justin. You had mentioned to me before maybe a trade with that first round pick with Ottawa.
Yeah, with Ottawa. Yeah, I've heard,
Brady Tkachuk.
Yeah, I heard Tkachuk and moving that number 5 pick at one point, or maybe even the number 3. But, ultimately, I think if you're Ottawa, right, maybe you look elsewhere. And I think, again, for the Rangers, Brady Tkachuk would be great. He'd be a fantastic fit. But I think right now, especially because since they just brought out Lundqvist, they've got so much dead money tied up, in all these buyouts. I think $16 million-ish, something like that. Like at this point, you're just going to say, no, maybe we're just going to pump the brakes because we're spending too much money on this. We'll take Lafreniere for a couple years at league minimum, cheap money, 900, whatever, thousand he's going to cost, or plus bonuses if he gets there.
At max, I think it's like $3.5 million.
Right.
But it's not till the next year that you pick that up anyway.
So you can defer a little cost. So again, I think the smart move is to just, again, how often do you get a chance to take a franchise type player? So,
Yeah, agreed. I don't think that the Rangers trade it. It's very, very, very rare. The last time the first overall pick was traded, it was involving a New York-based team. That was when the Florida Panthers traded for Roberto Luongo and
right,
that was the first overall pick for DiPietro. Was that the first overall pick, or was that
DiPietro was the number 1, but I think maybe it was Marc-Andre Fleury.
No.
They traded for, was it not?
No, it was Roberto Luongo.
Oh,
because the Islanders had Roberto Luongo. They dealt him to the Florida Panthers for that first overall pick.
Okay.
And they took Rick DiPietro.
But no, I think Pittsburgh made a deal for that number 1 pick for Fleury. But
Pittsburgh also made it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But regardless, it's very rare.
It doesn't happen very often. And especially now, like it's happening less and less. Where
scouting's getting better, development's getting better, and so you're able to better identify these number 1 picks, and you're not just rolling the dice, shooting in the dark and hoping that no one's going to turn off like Yakupov anymore. So,
yeah, it can always happen.
It
can always happen, and I really think it's some of the reason why, it is. You don't see the first overall pick often being somebody who is not American or Canadian.
Right.
I think just because there's more of that guarantee that they're going to play, and they've been playing in the system. Although now in Europe, a lot of those leagues have gone to the small ice, so that's helpful. But anyways, what moves are you thinking could happen at the draft? I know we did 3 shows on all the goaltending potential moves. We know goaltenders are on the table. But specifically at this draft, anybody that you think they're trying to move up, maybe don't mind moving down and acquiring some extra assets. What do you think?
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if a team like, for instance, Anaheim, right, that number 6 overall pick, they could be a team that maybe moves down. I know they wouldn't mind acquiring some assets. They're in the middle of a rebuild. I could see them being a team that shuffles back a few spots. And again, when we talked about goaltenders, right, there's a guy by the name of Askarov who is supposed to be the top dog, the top goaltending prospect coming into this draft. And there's a lot of people saying that he's not going to go past number 13. So here's a scenario where I think teams a little bit, further down on the draft board, maybe your Torontos or somebody like that, who could say, okay, we want to move up a few spots and grab this guy. So you could see some wheeling and dealing for a team like that to get up a few spots to snag this goaltender, because to me, I think he's the real deal. But like most teams, the top of this draft is so heavy with good forwards and defensemen that maybe you're a little hesitant to take a goaltender, because, again, goaltenders are the hardest position to judge when it comes to scouting.
Yeah, 18 years old.
Right, and especially that young. It's very rare you can go out and get a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury at 18 years old,
Like Carey Price.
Yeah, pluck them and just put them in, and they just succeed right away. Normally, you need time to develop. And again, I think this guy's the real deal to me. I think he's going to be a star goaltender in this league, but is it going to be right away? I don't really know. I think maybe you're going to be hesitant, but still, teams in the middle of that board are going to maybe look at this and say, hey, we've got an opportunity to move up a few spots. Let's go. Let's make a move and go get this guy.
Yeah, I definitely... I don't know if any team is going to intentionally move up the draft to get Askarov. I think if he falls, I think some team will go, well, at this point we have to take him. If he falls to 22, someone's going to take him. There's going to be a team. I don't know who it's going to be, but there's going to be a team that goes, you know what, we could use this guy.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way he's getting past number 13. New Jersey is one. I think New Jersey is one that if he does start to fall, I mean, New Jersey's got the 7th, 18th, and 20th overall picks. And they are certainly a team that if a goaltender falls to them and he's sitting there at 18, you got to think that they'll bite because they have that extra pick at 20, because they've already picked at 7. They could even shift themselves down and acquire even more. Who knows? But honestly, I think, again, I don't think personally he's getting past 13 with Carolina. I think they'll snag him up. But if for some reason,
like the return on investment with a goaltender compared to a center or a defenseman, I think it's just so hard to hit on a goalie.
Sure, absolutely.
And the return on investment, even like, okay, let's say he ends up he's a good starting goalie. You still spent your first round pick on him, and what happens when there's guys below you that got picked after Askarov that are now, let's say, a number one center on the team?
Yeah,
a number one center is more valuable than a number one goaltender because you can find other number one goaltenders. A number one goaltender in reality is a goalie who is about average, like in terms of save percentage, whereas a number one center is hard to come by, and you're willing to give up anything to acquire a number one center. And that's just where I'd be hesitant. If you think there's a number one center to be had, like an Anton Lundell or a Hendrix Lapierre, then maybe you're more hesitant to take that goalie. But if you think, there's no one even close to this goalie, he's going to be the next Carey Price, then okay, take that risk. But it could be your job. And that's the hard part. And based on how goalies develop, he probably won't be in the NHL, and because he's coming from overseas, he probably won't play in the NHL for 3, maybe 4 years. So if you're a GM, you're going.
Most GMs don't even last that long.
4 years, yeah. I mean, a GM average probably 6 or 7 years for a team if you're not winning. So you look at some of these teams and you go, is Carolina the team, the owner who is like, we want goals, we want more goals? Is he going to be cool with his team spending a first-round pick on a goalie?
Yeah, I think, I totally agree with you. I think number one centers, right, when teams find them and have them, they hold on. They don't trade them. It's rare. And goaltenders, just the opposite. I think, not that they're dealing them more, but I think they're more willing to deal them than they would be than a number one center. So you're right. The question is, I guess, once you get to the middle of that draft, obviously there's some GMs where, they have to win now. So they're more willing. They're going to want to take a forward, right? They're going to want to take a number one center or, winger that can score some goals for you, maybe plug in, in a year or two, versus a goaltender that might take 3-4 years, like you said, to develop and be ready. And so by then you might not even have a job. So
right. Yeah, exactly.
That's the concern. Now, I mean, on the flip side too, when we look at deals, right, guys getting traded,
there's always one deal that's just like, whoa, I can't believe that happened.
I know, right? I'm excited. I'm so excited for the draft because I think this is the year, especially with the flat cap, where a lot of teams are going to have to shuffle out a lot of money.
And you're going to have to just trade player for player.
Right. And I don't think necessarily that it might not be a situation where we see a lot of big names getting traded, but I do think we are going to see a lot of moves. So this could be quite a draft. Now, I will say one name that I think that's probably going to get moved, and he just shot up to number 1 on the trade bait board in TSN. I think that's OEL. I think Oliver Ekman-Larsson is going to get moved. I think right now they're talking. They originally, I think what it was, oh shoot, I can't remember who it was that was on his list of teams, and he just took them off. I think it was Edmonton.
Are they just trying to shed salary right now? Is that the
they are. They're number 2 in terms of most cap space spent, and they want to shred money at this point. They've got I don't know how they managed to spend so much money on middling players, but they did it. But they wish they could take back the amount of money they gave, Clayton Keller right now. But
sure, $7 million.
Yeah, but again, OEL is a guy who's still very serviceable. I think he is still a top pairing D-man.
Heck yeah.
So, how often do you get those guys that come around? And especially, he's got $7 million or 7 years left at $8.25 million, and that's going to be difficult to squeeze into a lot of teams that are tied up against the cap, and most competitive teams are, but. I think he's whittled down his short list, or at least there's 2 names that I feel like were mentioned that are not on his, according to, Pierre Maguire. Apparently there's, not Pierre Maguire, but, Darren Dreger. There are 2 teams that aren't on his no trade list, his 10-team list, and that was Vancouver and Boston right now. There's the teams that are interested in him, and I think both those teams, he would be a fantastic fit. Now, actually, I look
really
at
hope
Vancouver.
It's not Boston.
No, I don't think it will be. I honestly think it's going to be Vancouver because you kind of have that Swedish connection there, with Pettersson, Alex Edler,
and Quinn Hughes back there.
Yeah.
Holy mackerel!
And not only that, you could split those guys up. So now OEL doesn't have to play 30 minutes a game. You can say, okay, great, we're going to put you on the second or the first pairing. We're going to move Quinn Hughes to our second pairing just so he can, get away from those top, forwards on the other teams. And, put him on that top power play, the 2 of those guys, and let it rip.
Okay.
So,
all right.
That would be fun. Another guy who I think could get moved at the draft would be a Patrick Laine, just because I want to see him get moved at the draft. Maybe not so much that he will, but I want him to get moved.
Okay. Patrick Laine certainly is a guy who is going to garner a ton of interest. I'm sure that I feel like every year Montreal's kind of in on some of these, like, they've been trying to pull in a more of a superstar player, and after going after Aho last year with the offer sheet, you could see them doing something like that again. Someone that I'm wondering if the Anaheim Ducks are going to attempt to trade Ryan Getzlaf, who is a UFA. It wouldn't really be for money's sake. But could you get some nice assets for a Ryan Getzlaf right now?
Yeah, I think there's plenty of competitive teams out there that would say we would love to have this guy be our number 2 center, right? You look at a team like Winnipeg; they would kill to have Ryan Getzlaf play.
Would you give up
center.
a first round? Hey, give us your first round pick. We'll give you Ryan Getzlaf.
No, maybe a bottom number 29 overall pick, maybe, but. I'm probably going to give you a second round pick and maybe a B level prospect at this point.
The other side of it is that his cap hits 8.25, but he's only making 6. So maybe he's somebody who can go into one of those situations where they need more cap help there. Possibly the Florida Panthers, trading the Florida Panthers.
Maybe they could use the second
Panthers
line center.
They've got $21 million in cap space. They have. Basically, their entire center position's been pitted, and what a great move that would be to bring in a guy like Getzlaf and kind of probably anchor that.
They could use some leadership too, more than anything. I feel like don't get me wrong, Barkov and Huberdeau have been great veteran. I don't want to call them veterans at this point because they're only 26, 25, but I think they could use a veteran like Getzlaf who has the experience, who won a cup. That type of leadership on that team would be invaluable, let alone the cap space, on its own. But another team that I'm interested to watch, with this draft, and especially because there's such a tight window, I think they've got to move quick, is the Tampa Bay Lightning. They've got some cap issues that they've got to deal with. Obviously, we know Anthony Cirelli's an RFA. Sergachev is an RFA, who I think Sergachev's going to be a guy.
Sergachev just got himself paid.
Yeah, that's the thing. He showed up.
There's no way he's going to
playoffs.
make more than Hedman.
No, I think 7? He's going to be. Well, I think Sergachev will probably get around $6.5 million, right? But regardless, I think there's other teams out there that are going to be willing to try to offer sheet this guy that might say, let's give him $7.5-8 million because we know Tampa can't afford that at this point. And so what I've been hearing also a little bit of smoke about, Tampa's going to have to move somebody. Obviously guys like, Tyler Johnson, Yanni Gord, been on the block, but they've got no trade clauses, full no trade clauses. So they might not even go anywhere. They might say, no, screw you, we're staying. So I keep hearing rumors of a guy completely off the board that we would not expect. And to me, the first name is Steven Stamkos. That comes to mind.
Steven Stamkos
You
also
just proved
he has a no move clause.
He does, but that doesn't mean he can't be traded.
True.
So no movement is just basically I just can't go to the minors.
Okay. Right.
No trade, from what I understand. Now, if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me. But Tampa just went out and proved they can win the Cup without Stamkos, right? I mean, we've got Braden Point, we've got Kucherov putting up wild numbers in the playoffs. We don't need a number one center by the name of Steven Stamkos eating $8.5 million. So if you're a team that's been dying for a number one center, like a Detroit who's got plenty of cap space, boom.
Wow.
There you go.
What if, see, the way, though, that these guys were talking about Stamkos after they won the Cup was like, he did play with them. Even though he played like a shift. He happened to score on it.
The greatest shift ever in Stanley Cup Finals history. But,
Kucherov was like, it was the best 2 minutes anyone's ever played, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they were all saying. Now, I get it. His leadership is so valuable to that team. I mean, he is, because he was there from the beginning when they were terrible. He came in at number one, and like the rebuild started with him, and they eventually got to where they are today. He's played through, so many bad Lightning teams, and now he's, been a part of their success.
If Stamkos somehow got dealt, I just don't see it happening. That is a fascinating idea.
It would just be fun for me to watch that happen.
Would you think that Alex Killorn's probably the guy that is like, all right, he only has 3 years left, 4.4. It's a movable contract. He is 31. He does play in such a way where you're thinking probably towards the end of that deal he's not going to be as good. I think he can submit like a 16 team, no trade list. So you've got some options with him. Free up that 4.4, and you can probably do what you need to do with Sergachev.
Yeah, but let me throw this, because just the Detroit thing. If you got offered Robbie Fabry, next year's first round pick, a second this year and a second next year, would you take that for Stamkos?
Man, you just won the Cup. Do whatever the frick you want.
That's true.
You want to. You're probably though looking at this going like, we won the Cup. We didn't even have our top center playing for us. What happens if he's healthy? We could run the table again. And so with that in mind, I think they'll look to do something else. And to me, it's got to be Tyler Johnson. Like Tyler Johnson, they'll figure out a way. Like, hey, we got to move you. We're sorry.
Yeah, I think guys like that at this point, you won your Cup, right? You got your Cup, so
maybe he'd be willing to move, but maybe not. Maybe he goes, no, I signed this. I had this included. Here, right? Yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
Taxes,
I don't care.
Yeah,
I don't care. So that'll be that. That is you're right. Tampa Bay kind of sneaking in there as a team that really quickly has to turn around. Within 7 a week of winning the Stanley Cup, you maybe have to trade one of those guys to help you win the Cup.
Right. What a downer that's going to be for that guy.
Jeez.
Thanks for all, but get out.
Hey, nice boat parade. Bye. Yeah, I think looking at next year's list of UFAs, I think that there's a possibility that some of those players maybe are on some teams' radars to move, like a Brendan Saad. He didn't really pan out too well in Chicago. Maybe you don't want to sell super low on him, but Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, they're talking about re-signing him to an extension. I don't think he's going anywhere, but Derek Stepan, he's a UFA after this year. Arizona's trying to get rid of salary, and he's definitely not worth the 6.5, but maybe you can hang on to 2 of that. And,
now you're hearing Darcy Kemper's name thrown out there too, because there's a goaltender everybody would love to have.
Sure.
$4.5 million. Yeah. It's easy to fit that in somewhere.
Absolutely. I mean, and even more so, Tuukka Rask in Boston. We talk about this crazy goaltending. What if, Tuukka Rask, did he burn the bridge by leaving within the bubble? And it was within his rights to do so, but it's also within Boston's rights to deal him if they want to. He does have a modified no trade, so he can stop. A list of 8 teams he can be traded to.
Yeah,
15 teams he can be traded to now.
Yeah.
Now it's increased as the seasons go along.
Right. The other team I would keep an eye on is Carolina, right? They've got a boatload of defensemen. They're sitting at number 13. I think
this is always what we say every year.
Right,
Boatload of defensemen. But they're going to make a move, and they never do.
They have to now. They have to. Just the way these playoffs went, and they just fell short last year again, too. I think now you have to make the move to get over the top. You have to bring in, I think, a little bit of scoring. Like, we've heard Patrick Laine's name thrown around there, but I think they've got D-men to throw out there. And that number 13 pick, you can move down a few spots, acquire a few assets, and maybe, get an extra third or second round pick to throw in a trade to bring in, a scorer there.
There you go. I think the real ultimate question, and today's show is a little quick, but final thing. Who wins the Stanley Cup next year? But that question easily answered. Where does Patrick Maroon sign?
There you go.
That's all we need to know. I mean, everything else is moot.
Right.
Where will Patrick Maroon sign? I mean, does he re-sign with Tampa Bay? He could take another. I feel like there's something about him right now. Someone's going to give him 2.5 just to go, bring this guy in. There's something about him.
Yeah, he's a good luck charm for sure. He's a locker room guy. Then teams love those. So
I wonder if St. Louis would bring him back.
They would, but I don't think they have the cap space to do it. But
if he can get that few extra million,
he's going to Colorado. They're winning the cup.
The draft is upon us in just a few days. We will be watching together. We're figuring out how what we're gonna do during that draft. Whether it just be lots of Twitter, Instagram things, or there is the idea of tossing out a live show during the draft. But I don't think anyone would listen to it. So we'll do something. There'll be things during the draft. You can follow us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk and on Instagram at OT Hockey Talk, and we'll use those during the draft. Interact with us. Let us know what you think, and we will talk to you at the draft.